É com muito gosto que iniciamos estas conversas nos Encontros Cinematográficos. Esta primeira conversa terá lugar em inglês por causa do crítico e realizador Patrick Holzapfel. Por isso vou passar ao inglês. Mas estão todos convidados para fazer perguntas tanto em português quanto em inglês, como se sentirem mais confortáveis. A qualquer momento interrompam. Por favor. Well, it's a great pleasure to be here with you, with Marta, Mateus, whom I've met only today, and with Patrick, who is a friend and was actually the person who first shared Farpões Baldios with me. So it was it's a nice invitation, an occasion that we are here together today. I'm grateful. Even though I think you don't need any moderation to talk among you, but I think I thought of starting with the title, a question regarding the title, because of the differences in translation. With the translation, Farpões Baldios, Baldios in Portuguese relates to common land, to land that is owned collectively and that belongs to the commons, that is worked by the commoners. In English, the title you chose wastelands. That has some. I feel that there's a tension there that is productive. It's a productive tension. And Patrick also decided to write, while thinking about the film, you brought the poem by T.S. Eliot, The Wastelands. So I want to start with that tension between what is common and collective, what is baldios in Portuguese, and what is wastelands, or what becomes wastelands.
Baldios in Portuguese is also a land, a common land, a land for the commons, but it's also a place where nothing is planted. You know? So it has this both meanings, and I think maybe all the film came, or I constructed the film from these tensions, as you said, maybe in the language that I find more in Alentejo, where I think this very rich experience of the Portuguese language is more profoundly experience there. There's because I grew up in this place in Alentejo, but so the way they construct a sentence, the words they use that have so many different meanings are for me opened for me many lands. Many landscapes, so it's also a question, because yes, the land is common, it's from all of us, but there's nothing. It could be used in another way. It could be really it could really belong to everybody. But it's not like this, and many of you probably know, many of the Portuguese people would know that it's the region where the properties are the biggest properties in the country, that belongs to very few people. So the old people didn't have this experience of the land maybe baldios would have the two meanings at the same time. Okay, it's ours, but we can do nothing with it. So yes, and also farpões. It's a difficult word to translate because also in Portuguese has many different meanings, which can be a big farpa, the barb that they use to hurt the bulls, for example. But it also can be something that comes into our eyes, and it's actually in this the praying they say to
Santa Luzia.
To Santa Luzia. It's farpão. It's the name of a disease, which has a scientific name very strange that nobody knows really well, and it's a disease that nobody knows how it comes, from where it comes, and why the origin of the disease. So they call it farpão. It's something in my eye that doesn't let me see. So all the film I constructed in this. I don't think it's metaphoric, the way they speak, because it's very. It has very deep roots. The language there, it's very down to earth.
It's rooted in the everyday. It's not. It sounds like almost like poetry, but it's everyday poetry.
Yes. But actually, I found I learned not so long ago that this was for me a great example that Jesus says in the Bible many times, Amen. And Amen in Hebrew, it means to the on the stone, something on the with the feet on the stone, something very stable. And Jesus says Amen in the most paradoxical sentences or thoughts. So this, so we don't really understand the real meaning of what he's saying, and which is to say that in this way of speaking in Alentejo, in the way they say in the legends, even the poetry or the tales, there is not a direct mean, which is to say that don't impose a meaning to who is listening. Which it's they don't when they tell you a story, you don't understand very well the story. There is not a moral meaning very understandable. The narrative is not very clear. You don't know exactly in which side it's what, and where you should go, or what you should exactly learn from this story. And I had this experience since I was a child, to listen all these stories. And today, for example, I saw the film. Normally I don't see it, but after hearing all the things that the speeches at the beginning, I thought, okay, let's have an encounter with my film. So yes, it's very crazy. I don't understand. And I thought, how did I do this? You know, because it's and I understand how I understood while I was doing it why I should do this or that, but there's no meaning really. I'm not imposing something, so it's really this also the way memory is organized or can be organized, how you remember things. and how they can appear in your life, and also how these narratives emerge from this landscape, and each even the sayings, they like, I always laugh when I see this little child when she says ashes from home will save the world. I think, how
Comes from, where does it come from?
It's a saying.
One wonders, yes.
Yes, and it's a moment sincerely, I always laugh thinking how I put this little girl saying that. But she was, while we were rehearsing, I tell her, you're a very wise girl. You know everything, what is going on, and they passing, they going, and you know exactly what is going on, where they're going, and where. And she told me, yes, I know. So she sits and she says this. She's 6 years old, and she felt she could say this sentence. She knew the meaning of the sentence, like she could speak the sentence. She could speak what it can mean, and what it can mean, many things, and they all transmit this knowledge, this but not as an imposition of a moral or a strict passage, or it's always something that you can recognize, like Amen, which is paradoxal. So all this, even the title, the two words, especially in Portuguese, I think, because I was a bit sad when
the translation.
Yes, when I tried to translate all the film, was very difficult to translate. There's a friction between
but I
the
think
two
there's
words.
a friction. The friction is stronger in Portuguese.
Yes.
No, because we have the barbs. Verpões makes me think immediately about property, private property, somehow, and like barbs, something that you have to trespass or not, or prohibition, or something that is in your way that stops you from interrupts your vision, or and I think we somehow it gets lost in, or not lost, but less strong in English. Something the collective and the private, or the.
Yes, but that it's also in the.
But it's present in the film afterwards.
Yes, it's maybe, but I feel also in, like I said in the interview Patrick made to me, answering the questions. Patrick did to me. There is. It's also from this. We also can learn, or to look at the film, even me, in a different way. When I read the sentences in English or in French, because also I feel that the way they understood the film, or even hear the film in Alentejo, it's very, very different. Maybe here, maybe people from Fundão will listen this language in a different way, I'm sure. In Lisbon is very different. And I just understood this after, because for me this is a normal language. Mm-hmm. But I was not aware of it before.
But for me, to be very honest, I didn't even conceive the words so much as the rhythm of how it's spoken, or the voices are much stronger for me than the words which I could only read in English. And like when you said a bit earlier that now it's totally crazy for you to see that, I think that is because I was asking myself also now, being invited here as a not Portuguese speaking person to talk about that film with you that have actually a totally different approach to that culture, to that language. I mean, I was asking myself, why did I actually decide to write about that film? I mean, how can I know? But I think it is exactly that there was something I didn't know, I didn't understand, and I find writing or thinking about it in writing a very valuable approach to getting closer to something that is something different, something other. And it is exactly in this what you described a bit as lost in translation. It is in this margins, I think, that an experience of otherness can be possible for a viewer that is from some completely different background, completely different world, I would say. And to see that and then to recognize maybe that this is a film about something that is very grounded at the place, but through that communicates a lot that also reaches totally different worlds. Whereas I think today in cinema very often the opposite happens, that films try to be very universal, try to reach big audiences, but they are discussed in a way as if they were something regional, which they are not. They are shot at a place, but this place is exchangeable. And this is not true for your film, and I think that is why it speaks universal. It's the other way around for me. So that's why I don't think, of course I used, because I had Wastelands, and then you think and you read the poem, and you make a connection, but it's not so important for me actually. What was important for me, that I felt that what the people say in that film is something related to their culture very much, and I think from there it's a good starting point to think about something, even if it's farther away, than to know more. But you learn through that, I think. Yeah.
And why don't we speak about dialogues? Because in your text you refer three types of dialogues.
Yeah.
A dialogue with cinema, a dialogue between the children, the very young and the very old, the dialogue between the actors and the camera.
Yeah.
Maybe you can elaborate.
Well, the dialogue, it's funny because we're here now and it's about dialogue. It's very good. It is also the question, first and foremost for me, what speaks to us in a film. And as I think many of us here, or some of us here, watch a lot of films, we know that sometimes you are in a mode of watching and watching and watching, and nothing really happens. It's nice, sometimes it's entertaining, or you take something home, but I think then sometimes it's like, I would take the risk of using the metaphor of waking up. It's like sometimes you wake up when you see a film, you see something, you don't know why, like waking up, you don't know why you woke up at that specific moment, but there was something, and it is a form of dialogue. The day has a dialogue with you. You awake because the sun hit your face, or you heard a bird, or anything, and it is like that. That is the first form of dialogue that I think happens with films that speak to us in a certain way. But then also a dialogue that I find in your film, that we also talked a bit about in the interview, a dialogue that is not about telling someone something, but giving voice. And it's also not about, there's a tendency in cinema that I don't like a lot, in documentary cinema, that is making films with people and through them talk about ourselves, which I find terrible, but it's really a dialogue that gives voice, or gives the potential for someone to say something. Just create a space for that. And that I find is the strongest dialogue in your film. I see that this is not, when you said it's not imposed, I also connected with your film. I think it's not imposed. And I think that's very difficult to do, to not impose a a language or a thinking. It's the other way around in that film in a way. And yes, I don't know, maybe you can talk a bit about how long, because I can imagine there were moments in the process of making these films where of course you had ideas, and then, but how is this adaptation, or how do you stay flexible for what people bring to the film? I think that's I'm interested in that.
In which way?
In the way that if you come with a certain idea of what it should be, but maybe through observation, through spending time with those people, some of that changes. So I wonder if that is, how can you let that in? Because many people can't let that in, but obviously you can. So I want to know.
I wrote the film very fast. It was good because I had a deadline, so I had to write a film. So I wrote the film very fast, and it's something. And I realized after, because I knew it by heart in a way. I know I lived there. I've heard so many of their stories, and so it was through these narratives that I wrote the film. But I understand maybe better now that I did it, that it's really constructed in the way they narrate there, or the way they share with you their stories. But when I arrived there, because I live there, but I don't live there for a long time. I go there many times, but maybe I don't spend a long time there, or I didn't spend I was not going there to do a film. So when I started to go there to look for the places and to start to work with the people and all of this, first I understood Alentejo was not like I imagined. I had, even if I was going there a long time, for always, on weekends or go and come back, I realized I wrote a film like Alentejo was when I was a child. So I was really living in the fiction. I wrote the film in my memory, with my memory.
You also speak about second-hand memory.
Yes, also because I had the memory of the memory they shared with me. I had these memories, but also I had an image of. I created images of those stories, and also I've created through memory an image of that place where I grew up, which was not real today. So I started to of course I was a bit conscious of it. When I grew up, it was wheat fields were all over the Alentejo. Today it's not. There are very few places more in the south. So there are many things that really disappeared, and maybe I also wrote some things in the film because of that. Because I was maybe unconsciously, I knew that they disappeared already. So it's between this. So it was a bit of a shock when I started to see where to film and all of that. First, because the places I used to go before, they were all closed, which was not happening before. Everything was open, even if the property is from someone. It was not closed. You could come in, even if people would not go there because it's the property of someone. But you could pass, or you could come in the property. So everything is closed because now there's cows. So it's not the Germans, but the people from Holland come there and do a lot of. They have cows, so it was not a normal thing in Alentejo. It was all cultivated with different kinds of cereals and all of this. There are sheep, but cows is not typical from Alentejo. So everything is closed.
They do not appear in your film?
No. No, it's true.
It was not part of your memory of Alentejo?
If I may shortly get in there, it reminds me, I recently read a book by John Steinbeck, The Log of the Sea of Cortez, where he describes in a short paragraph a guy who traveled in the 19th century to Panama City. And before he went there, he read everything about Panama City. He was like a lexicon of Panama City. What he didn't know was that Panama City, like a couple of months before he arrived there, was destroyed. It was really destroyed, and it was built up a couple of kilometers farther north. So he went to this new place, and Steinbeck describes this guy found everything there that he thought would be there, although it couldn't have been there. And studying his diary, you can see that he actually imagined a place that was no longer there. Mm-hmm. And I think this is for filmmakers, that is a very tricky thing. You know, it's something to be aware of, because to construct an imagined place is not so difficult. It's more difficult to look at something that is actually there, I think. So.
Yes, because to write for few people, maybe it's very easy, but then there is reality there. And that's a good starting point to talk about scripts for the Institute of Cinema, for example. But yes,
did you rewrite your film?
No. But I didn't have a script really. I had dialogues and I had some things, some movements, like the boy walking backwards was written. Many things were written, but like I said, I look at the landscape, and this was for me the only problem I thought I would never have, because it's my home. I see it. I know it. But it was one of the most difficult things for me was to film in this landscape, to film nature, to be in the middle of nature. Sometimes I felt I would like to have, like a street or something to organize because it's very, very hard to look at a tree or it's very hard to find a place for the camera. It was very difficult for me. But I didn't know I was... when you ask how did I adapt, I didn't adapt. Of course I adapted, but I didn't know how I was going to do the film, really. And I never thought about it, which is good and bad, because then you feel I'm stuck here, how I'm going to do it. I don't know how I'm going to do it. So I didn't have... I created some images, of course, like I said, like the boy or some things. But for example, all the beginning of the film, I invented there. So while I was preparing the film, I thought I saw some places, and I thought it has to be that somebody threw the tools of. That are guarded for a long time, or the slide
barn.
The barn where everything. I knew that would be a very, very old place where things were kept for a long time and useful. And actually I found a place that was exactly how I thought, because that exists, that some people closed or just stopped doing agriculture and closed everything there. So
there's somehow how violence emerge in your film. All the tools that are there that are not these agricultural tools that are no longer in use.
Yes, but it's a very strong tool. If you can use it in many ways. So it's very hard. It's very, very heavy. Uma enxada. It's very heavy. When you pick up one, you understand how difficult it's to work on the fields. Just to have one in your hands. So imagine what is to use it through one day. Like they were working from since the sun was rising until they go to sleep, and they were paid sometimes with a piece of bread. So yes, for me it was not really adapting, or it was I had this script, and I started to work to find people that I thought I would love to work with, and then we tried to say the dialogues, and then I saw some places and I thought, okay, here we can maybe do that, and then it was a process of repetition, and it's people, so some of them do something like this, some of them would do differently. So I chose the people also. I asked the people, maybe you could come today and maybe we could do this, and they accept. So we work a little bit, and I don't know how, but I had the feeling that they understood, especially the elders and also the kids. I never work with them very much. We didn't rehearsal a lot. It was really the rehearsals were all filmed. So we tried on working, and I don't know how, but I felt they understood perfectly what we were doing, even if none of us knew exactly what we were doing. But it was they trusted it completely, and also because they trust me, I trust me a little bit. I trust myself a little bit more, and it's something that you share in that moment, and it's what happens that day there in the Of course, the dialogues we had a lot of work with the dialogues to help them to memorize and all of this, with Maria Catarina especially, because
the old woman.
Yes,
in the clearing.
In what?
Na clareira, in the clearing.
Yes.
At the
Because she doesn't know how to read, so I rehearsal a lot with her before. I repeated many times. I pass the days with her, so we have lunch and everything. We just go there and be with her, and so we talk a lot about her life. And actually, when I wrote the text, when I wrote the dialogues, especially this part of that she plays, I thought of somebody else, because this story was really, part of it was another woman that with who I grew up, that told me all of this, but she couldn't do it for many reasons. She couldn't do it, but actually her story is the story of almost all the people there, because they all didn't go to school. They were working since they were children, very young, very little. It's a common story. So it was the story of Maria Catarina in a different way. So we talked a lot about. She told me, because she likes very much to say her story, because she has really. She really feels it's very, very important to be told. So if you go there to her cafe in Veiros, she will start to tell you how it was. And she's talking about it to her grandchild, and she's always telling and retelling stories.
It's a matter of transmission that I think it's so at the core of the film.
Yes, but for her... and maybe I know Maria Catarina for for 20 years maybe or more. But for her, she's very, very conscious of the importance to share this story, and she's telling this story a lot to her grandchildren, or to the youngsters, because she knows the difference. She knows how we are growing up and how she grew up, and what we must keep as a value for life, and how we should look at our history to understand each other, to connect for the community, really. So
to safeguard the community, but also to anticipate a community to come, no?
Yes, and that history doesn't repeat itself. There's always a warning on this transmission also.
But then I'm curious, because I never did ask you this, but it always was in my mind. I mean, the film is like, it's a come and go, because in the beginning somebody emerges from the shadow, basically, and in the end people go away. And I never felt what you just described as something that will, something positive, or something, a potential for a different thing. I always felt that this is just abandoning the last shot, which for me, it's people going, and it's like young and old going both. I mean, you could say they go together, but they go. And maybe you can tell me about that last shot, which I never asked about, because I always, also this factory building, it's very interesting, because that is also something, if you don't know a culture and you get introduced from a perspective that relates it to cinema first and foremost. For me, that looked like almost from a Jacques Tati film, which is strange because it is a real thing, but it looked like this is a factory Jacques Tati would work in, maybe. And of course, I know immediately, okay, this has nothing to do with Jacques Tati, but then on the other hand, I decided to not ask you, because I think it's also important to not know sometimes, but now I want to know. Tell me about that. Tell me about it.
I don't know. First, it's a silos where I remember when I was a child, people would bring the wheat after they collect the wheat. It's where it's called EPAC. It was the place that collects the wheat in all the country. So the agriculturists would go there and...
After they sell it?
Yes. No, it's like I don't know, maybe cooperative. They first receive it and they pay you a kilo or something like this. So they would collect it and it's abandoned. And this says many things. It's abandoned, and the new bus station, it's exactly next to the silos, and actually in the place where it was the train, where the train passed they destroyed it, and they did the bus station, and then this huge monster alone, empty, that many people doesn't know what it is. And because I always felt this in this film that they should walk a lot. It's a walking film. It has to have this time, because I remember to hear, of course when I grew up it was not like this, but I remember to hear that they would go from village to village walking, and it would be a long time to go, because it's a lot of kilometers, so they would... so I imagined... we don't have this experience. It's... maybe we have in the city, okay, we still walk, but it's not the same thing. It's... everything, it's you can see it in you see the world in a different way when you it's that there's no there's no rush. It can be no rush. Everything is different. But then I thought, okay, the silos is empty. They walked so much now. Maybe they can take a bus. It would be easier. And yes, maybe they abandoned it. It's a bit abandoned, all the interior of the country. Maybe they go and come back. We don't know. But
I also had, it might be wrong, but I also had the perception that even among the children there were the children that that maybe came from the city, that are not, that relate to the landscape in a different way than Miguel and Catarina do. I have I had the impression that there was I don't know if a class difference, but at least a different way of relating to the landscape. Of course, with the same. Well, I think it was.
You somehow felt that the children related to landscape differently.
There's Miguel and Catarina. I think they relate to the landscape in a different way than the others, somehow. But the others who live also in the bus. So I thought maybe they were already.
Yes, but
when you think of rural exodus and how they perhaps they study in a different in a big city or in some elsewhere, but not there, and they live. And
no, they are all from there. All the children are from there. Actually, the little girl, the little wise girl, she's the one that she really she lives next to the fields. Actually, her mother she does honey, so she has this experience with nature and with bees, and she knows everything about. So she's the most connected actually to nature. But it was very strange for me to find that all this, they're all almost all from Estremoz, which is the biggest city. It's a city. It's more than a village, but very little city. And some are from villages around. But I felt mostly it's something very strange, because they live there today. In the city, they live in an island, because they don't connect they don't go to the fields. And when we were little, we just want to be in the fields. We go into nature like this, So I felt they were also on holidays. They were actually on holidays from school, but while we were preparing and everything and doing the light or waiting for something, they were all playing in the fields, but they don't have the normal experience of going to the fields. But children connect very, very fast with nature. In 1 minute they arrive, they're there, okay, we don't know what is this, but they will not be looking. They straight away start to climb trees so they were really having fun all the time and doing a lot of crazy things. But yes, was this experience that was very beautiful also to give them. But many of them, they're brothers and sisters. Miguel has no, they're not. But the kid has two brothers, one sister and a brother that also play in the film. Also, his mother is the woman that is calling him, and many aunts and cousins, and they play there. Also, because when I was preparing the film, mostly who I didn't know, it was the children, because I go there, but I don't live there for a long time, so I knew some kids, but I don't connect with them, or I didn't know. It was a very, very hot summer, and I didn't see any kids, so I thought I have to do a casting, which is something that I hate. But I really had to do it because it was the only form to organize it, because it was so hot that nobody would go to outside. So you just see a desert. So I did a casting, and it was very strange because all the kids came that came to the casting. I was again in shock that I was living 30 years ago, maybe almost. And I look at the kids, and they look like they were all very sweet, but they look like a Pantene advertisement. From where they come, we were not like this. We were all dirty, and we were kids, you know. And they all look, and I remember, but we were not like this, and we have faces of Alentejanos. And they look like whatever. They could be from any region. But I felt we had some different look when we were children. And I have a gypsy friend, and I call him and I said, Tony, I have this problem. I don't find all the children they look like they come with makeup, you know. And they said, you want gypsies, little gypsies? And I said, yes, please. So he introduced me to the kids of his friends, and many of the people that play in the film are gypsies. So, and when I saw them, I think there's something really in the physiognomy of how, you know, it's not just the look, it's something, it's an expression. Maybe because they go more outside, they were more queimados, como é que se diz?
Tamed?
Yes, they have they're in the sun. They go outside, and I felt we were more like this. And so when I see when you look at pictures, for example, of Alentejanos of the 40s, 30s, even 70s, 80s, when I grew up, I think we were like a bit more like the gypsies. And now today you go there and everybody, I don't know, it's something changed very fast, even if in the way people look. which is something very strange. Maybe there's also this lack of experience of landscape. Maybe we were much more outside. Maybe the wind was on our faces much more. Maybe we were at the rain. Maybe we were at the sun. So there's maybe this really affected.
The way we relate to the world is different.
Also, of course.
But still, what you hinted at, I think, is also that there is there's a different. We also experienced this landscape and the history of this places differently because we see it not through the eyes of children, but with them. We experience the way they experience it in a way. We see it's suddenly sometimes a playground. What was once a working ground is now a playground, and I think this is that produces a gap. That yeah.
I want to ask something about that. You wrote about dissent, this dissent and play, and the relation between dissent and play in the film.
I just think it's. I mean, what I think is that you have this idea of. How do we look at? How do we approach a place? There are 100 million possibilities to go somewhere or how we look at something, but then if you do it in a way that is following a play, and I find it very funny that here will be shown a film which I don't like so much, but it is The Return by Zwerginchev. I don't know on the... and I think I don't like the film so much, but the first 10 minutes of that film follows children playing, and it is a shock then when suddenly you realize that you were in their world, because it's very tense moment and you think, oh my god, something terrible will happen, and then suddenly somebody screams, oh, come home eating, and so on. And I think that this way of perceiving a place, it opens up possibilities, and that is, I think, something that you felt when you described that there is also something pointing towards a possible future, let's call it.
Yes.
Because it is like that. The place is something else for them. It's not as... The history is not... For them it's not so... It's something else. They see that there are these farmers that hunt them away and so on, but for them, I hope everyone remembers when we were children that happened, and we didn't consider that as something bigger political picture, but it is something we can then... come from the back and try to change, really, yeah.
And maybe we can also, something that I quite appreciate in your film, or the way, not just in your film, but the way, but I think it's very strong in your film, is the way different temporalities are there in the same plane, in the same film, and how you don't know exactly not where you which time is this? No, what time is this? Is the time of the agrarian revolution? Is the reform? Is the time of it's nowadays? What time is this? These different temporalities at play, I think, are very what opens a gap or a sense of possibilities. Walking is very important for this, I think. And walking backwards, also, that moment. But the last scene, the scene at the clearing with the old olive trees, and I think that's one of the strongest part of the film, because it's the conjuring. It's how I feel that there's a sense of or a calling for a community, be it a community of the dead that return, the children. All of a sudden, when there's the collective image, the children are not there, are absent. But
I think also this is why also maybe we experienced today. It was the strongest for me so far. The last scene very strongly, because the sound of the bus, for me comes from another time, because up to then there is no such sound. And I also think that I had to think a lot about there's a statement by Tom Anderson when he says, for him, image separates and sound unites. So, and I think in your film that is very strong, but in the last cut, also the sound separates. That's why I experienced, because there's a change in the sound landscape, I hear. There's always this ringing of things, and I have the feeling I hear for the whole film until the last shot the what's it called, the tools. Yes, I hear them from until that last shot, and then I hear a bass, which is something completely different. So I think that is related to this experience of time. That, yeah.
It's I don't know in which time we are. Even today, even now, it's everything. It's connected. No, it's here's the past, the present, and the future, and this is. It's the time of cinema. It's something that cinema can do. So, that was also. First of all, it's my first film, so it's the first experience I had of trying to construct something with film, and I wanted to do an approach to this time and to the space of these narratives, of the way they express themselves there, how they express the tales, the legends, the saying, and maybe there is a lot of fragments, but these fragments are maybe moments of a very big moment, or a memory, a prophecy, but also the conjuring to it was also for me, because it's they pray to Santa Luzia to see better, to clear the eyes. So it's something that someone that would like to do cinema would be grateful to to be cured, because this is the difficulty of cinema for me. It's how we look, how we see, and it's an exercise of seeing, of looking, and so it's also how to look at all this story, all this history, all these little stories, the personal stories, the collective stories, the presence of that landscape, experienced by many different people from very young, how they relate in their own age, with their own time, at the same place, because whatever in which time we are, whenever the time is, they're all there. The place is the same, but it's not the same. It was something else before. So it's the moments they're living there. It's the time they build their own time in that place. So it's all a construction. Construction is also how memory works, and memory, it's a very, very complex construction already. So that I think it for me it helped a lot. I think it's something that we can work with cinema can work with.
Jakoś wracam z Marta. Eu sou suspeito porque eu tenho uma afinidade diletiva com o Alentejo desde os meus 15 anos, com a vidigueira e com esta monocultura e com este... Ainda apanhei o fim do marcelismo, portanto, no Alentejo, este mundo de que a memória do filme eu vou falar em português, peço desculpa, senão não consigo já estou um bocado cansado das traduções, hoje em francês, tanta viagem e em inglês, então é complicado. Mas para dizer que tocou-me imenso. E depois há assim uns episódios, eu só queria perguntar uma coisa à Marta, que é aquela cena fortíssima do throughout, de tools, das alfaias. É uma coisa fortíssima e eu dei por mim, quando estava a ver, a pensar se isso remete para a memória dela, que ela assistiu quando era criança, na sua infância, na sua meninice, no Alentejo, alguma coisa, alguma revolta dessas. Não contra as alfaias, mas contra o trabalho árduo, duro do campo. Ou se isto tem a ver mais com o nosso presente, que é a porra do trabalho agrícola, não é? Que isto é pesadíssimo, como tu falaste, muito bem na enxada, já tem um peso considerável, e portanto as pessoas já estão fartas de trabalhar a terra, que é muito bonito, trabalhar a terra, botar a terra. Mas é uma cena fortíssima aquela de deitar fora ao mesmo tempo de revolta, não sei, qualquer coisa é muito forte, realmente, é muito... Sobretudo no Alentejo. Pronto.
Tá, obrigado. Não sei se alguém quer fazer mais alguma questão ou algum comentário. Assim, temos mesmo que fechar. Sim. Temos 2 filmes para ver, são pequenos, curtos. Mas alguém tem mais algum comentário ou pergunta? Any question in English or in Portuguese? Or commentary? Não? Ok, Marta. Peço só que seja breve.
Essa cena, há muitas pessoas que eu ouvi já muitas pessoas dizerem que já ouvi vários comentários diferentes, que é um gesto que é muito agressivo, que as enxadas estão a ser deitadas fora.
Sim.
Para mim é exatamente o contrário, as enxadas que estavam guardadas, que estão a ser lançadas outra vez, mas se calhar essas imagens aparecem também também apareceram para mim, foi uma imagem que me apareceu e que eu achei que tinha que filmar, mas que não pode querer dizer muitas coisas, não é? De facto as enxadas estão mais guardadas, podemos voltar a utilizá-las ou não, e depois é isso, o martelo serve para muitas coisas. Depende.
Bem, eu acho que... Bem, uma excelente frase. Ok, eu quero agradecer só à Sílvia, thank you deeply Patrick, à Marta, e agora vamos ver os 2 filmes que a Marta escolheu, e se calhar também pode falar um bocadinho disso, e o Miguel Marias também faz o favor de falar um pouco sobre o filme do Griffith e do Jacques Tourneur.